It seems the composer's work is never finished. Just a little something to keep in mind as we dive into Clara Schumann's Ihr Bildnis. Hello and welcome back to Meet Mozart. I'm Angie, that's Mozart, and today we are continuing our deep dive into the songs of Clara Schumann through her piece Ihr Bildnis. The writing of art song, or Lieder, as our German composer would have called it, was a big part of life in the Schumann household. In fact, Robert was really the one who encouraged Clara to write more art songs. And in response to his request, she gifted him with 3 songs, one of which was Ihr Bildnis, for their first Christmas together. Of those 3 songs, Robert only published one of them right away, and Ihr Bildnis was later re-edited and then published about 4 years later. And what's really fascinating for us as musicians is that we actually have both the original version and the later edited version. And so we get to see really clearly the growth of a composer over those 4 years. The poem by Heinrich Heine, who was a famous poet at the time and who has actually a quite fascinating backstory that I don't have time to go into here today, but I hope you would take the time to look into, focuses on a speaker who is looking at a picture of his beloved. And as the poem continues, we learn that this beloved has actually left them in some form, whether it was, abandoning them, breaking up, or actually dying. And it's up to us as the listener to kind of get to decide what we think may have happened. And what's interesting about how Schumann decided to set that, especially in the original version, was that it begins with this really sort of serene piano part. And it sounds very nice and hopeful and romantic. But then as we go along and we get a fuller picture of the relationship between the speaker and the beloved whose picture he's looking at, we start to hear more dark, dissonant harmonies, or crunchy harmonies, as I like to call them. They sound not exactly right. And in fact, the vocal line ends on a diminished chord, which sounds like this. It has sort of a sad and yet menacing quality to it. And from that point, then the piano continues and eventually ends once again in major. In Schumann's second version, she changes quite a few things. First of all, it seems that in those 4 years, she got more confident and more aware of how to better set a vocal line. In comparison to the first version, which takes us from notes that are quite low in the range and then has us switch up to a higher range, within a beat or two, she starts to actually transition more smoothly through the vocal line, and so that feels much more natural to the singer. She also made a lot of changes to those harmonies, and she seems to have replaced a lot of those dissonant, crunchy chords with ones that feel more melancholy and actually moves through them in a much smoother way. And instead of ending the vocal line on the diminished chord, she actually ends it in the major key. And when Vika, my distinguished pianist, and I were both looking at these pieces and looking at the 2 different versions, we felt really strongly that the second edition was a better composition as a whole. The vocal line was much easier, the harmonies made more sense, but we really, really missed that diminished chord at the end of the vocal line. And so we're going to do a very unique version of the piece today, and we're going to go ahead and sing most of it from that second re-edited version, but we're going to end the vocal line on that diminished and go back into the major. So I hope you'll enjoy this very one-of-a-kind take on Clara Schumann's Ihr Bildnis. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed our little mashup of the two editions of Schumann's Ihr Bildnis, and I hope you'll join us again tomorrow with your dancing shoes in hand as we look at one of her very early songs, Walzer. Until then, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, push all the fun buttons, including that little notification bell, and